The time: 23:47 hours. November 5th, 2025. Inside the Southern Military District's Air Defense Command Center at Rostov-on-Don, the night was quiet. 124 miles east of Donetsk, the silence shattered. A cascade of alarms screamed through the command post as radar screens flashed to life, painting a picture of emerging threats for their defense systems. The contacts spread, a digital infection moving from west to northwest. In less than 20 seconds, the count exploded. 12 targets, then 27. Then over 50 blips, a dense, angry swarm on the display. It was a digital storm, a full-spectrum assault blanketing the eastern sky, a bold move by the opposing Air Force. The initial wave consisted of crude but effective weapons. Bober drones, simple wooden frames with a 62-mile range. UJ-22 airborne decoys, cobbled together from plastic pipe and motorcycle engines. Ghost signatures mimicked high-value targets. Stu-100 missiles, even HIMARS rockets. This was advanced defense technology used for deception. The entire swarm of modern weapons surged forward. The Russian Major General, commanding the region's integrated air defense system, felt the pressure of this new modern warfare. He did not hesitate. Over the encrypted net, the order was sharp and clear. Engage all contacts. Priority 1, defend Donetsk airport. For the Ukrainian soldiers monitoring the channels, it was the exact response they had anticipated in this war. The plan was unfolding perfectly. Pantsir S-1 and Tor M2 defense systems scrambled, their troops frantically launching against cheap, expendable targets. They were firing at phantoms. Each interceptor, valued between $100,000 and $500,000, was wasted on a $1,000 drone. Russian command was blind to the truth. The military update they failed to receive was that over 50 of the inbound UAVs were phantoms, carrying only token charges or simple radar spoofing beacons. Around Donetsk and Spartak, Russian batteries reported kill after kill. But in this war analysis, every successful intercept was a self-inflicted strategic wound. Each missile launch was a broadcast. It fed priceless data to Ukrainian SIGINT units, the exact coordinates of the launcher. This was the real military news being written on the battlefield. It gave them the fire control radar frequencies, K-band, X-band, VHF. It revealed their reaction time, an average of 45 seconds from detection to launch. A complete profile of their defense. The Russian air defense network was exposing itself, launcher by launcher, radar by radar, gap by gap, a fatal flaw in their military doctrine. Like a grandmaster sacrificing a pawn, the Ukrainian army had laid a trap. The bait was designed to be seen, to force a predictable, fatal response. The decoys had done their job. The Russian defense network was saturated. Now, the real strike package began its approach, a textbook example of asymmetrical warfare. The hunters moved in, silent, precise. Two Su-24M strike aircraft from the Ukrainian Air Force, aging Soviet workhorses, repurposed for a deadly mission. They flew low, just 50 to 60 meters off the deck, using the terrain to blind enemy radar. Their payload, 2 Storm Shadow cruise missiles per aircraft. Devastating long-range weapons. Each missile carried the Broach multi-stage warhead, weighing nearly 2,186 pounds. These modern weapons were designed for one purpose: to shatter hardened military targets like command bunkers. Their targets: ammo depots and fortified compounds. Simultaneously, over 20 FPV drones moved in below, each armed with a fragmentation charge of 6.6 to 11 pounds. Just enough to shred soft targets, supply trucks, fuel tanks, and exposed troops. But their primary role was electronic: to jam, to sense, and to sow chaos. They kept the radar operators guessing, unable to distinguish hunter from bait. The strike formation, operating with the precision of a Navy fleet, steamed toward Donetsk airport, a key front in this global conflict. Their objective: the primary Shahed drone logistics hub for the entire Eastern Front. They arrived at the precise moment of total chaos in the Russian air defense net. A window of opportunity. It would last only minutes, but it was enough to alter the strategic calculus of the entire front. Donetsk airport was now less than 10 minutes from annihilation. The Storm Shadows and over 20 FPV drones were the airborne fist poised to strike. They carried a combined explosive payload of over 6,614 pounds. Their target, the logistical heart that fueled nightly attacks on Ukrainian cities and soldiers. Attacks on Kramatorsk and countless other towns originated here. The facility housed between 500 and 1,000 Shahed 136 Geron-2 drones, a massive arsenal. Alongside them, 1,500 warheads, fragmentation and penetration types, many already fueled and ready for the next wave of this brutal war. If the compound went up, it would mean more than just destroyed drones. The entire Russian military's capacity for long-range strikes in the east would be crippled, and that was only the beginning. The objective: cripple the enemy air force for weeks. Two Su-24Ms screamed low, terrain hugging at Mach 0.8, a mere 50 to 60 meters off the deck. They threaded the needle through dense pine stands, high-voltage pylons, and the rusted roofs of abandoned villages. This was the brutal reality of modern warfare in occupied Donetsk. At this altitude, there is no margin for error. One misjudged rise in the earth, one sudden gust of wind means instant death. The aircraft becomes a fireball. As they closed on the target, the cockpit lit up. The radar warning receiver screamed silently, its lights flashing with growing intensity as enemy defense systems began to stir. It was a clear sign. Russian warning radars, likely a Buk M1 or a Kupol system, were painting them, catching faint returns from their airframes. Every second became a high-stakes duel of technology and nerve. A battle between the Ukrainian pilots and the exhausted Russian soldiers on the scopes, frantically sorting real targets from a storm of digital ghosts. The Russian radar crews, weary from long shifts, were disoriented by the electronic assault. On their screens, every new bright dot looked exactly like the last. They could no longer distinguish bait from threat. In this fog of war, no one on the Russian side realized two real Su-24s were slipping deep into their territory. They were ghosts, cloaked in a thick electronic shroud pumped out by their escort drones, over Yasinuvata, over Makiivka, heading straight for the airfield now just 50 kilometers away. 0 hour was imminent. Suddenly, a piercing alarm shrieked through the cockpit. Missile lock, active, 4 o'clock high. A stubborn Pantsir S-1 unit near Spartak had achieved a weak lock. Its advanced defense technology had punched through the dense jamming. For a fraction of a second, its Ka-band tracking radar sliced through the electronic veil. It was the heartbeat between life and death. The pilot, callsign Hawk, yanked the stick hard back. The fencer snapped into a 90-degree roll, executing a savage, low-altitude J-turn. A maneuver only the most skilled soldiers would dare at this height. He punched the countermeasures. A storm of chaff and flares erupted aft, a blinding cloud of heat and metal. The sky bloomed with a massive thermal and radar reflective shield. A deafening blast tore the air apart as a 57E6 missile screamed past their tail. It detonated 200 meters behind them. The explosion flashed across the pilot's visor. Death had just grazed past, leaving the smell of cordite hanging in the air. There was no time to exhale. The two Su-24Ms had penetrated the launch window, the ideal point to fire their weapons at exactly 93 miles from the target. In the cockpit, a calm voice cut through the static on the low-band encrypted channel. Target coordinates loaded. Weapons ready. Confirm launch. On the lead aircraft, two Storm Shadow cruise missiles, truly modern weapons separated cleanly from the underwing pylons. They dropped free. Within 3 seconds, the second Su-24 released its payload. 2 more missiles, dispersing on parallel tracks. 4 cruise missiles, each weighing more than 2,866 pounds, ignited as they cleared the aircraft, streaking into the night. Their micro-turbo TRI-6030 engines spooled to life. Each Storm Shadow initiated its dual-mode navigation. The flight to target would last 7 to 8 minutes. They threaded the rugged Donbass terrain, following river lines and the edges of old highways, simulating a raptor's path to its prey. In the terminal phase, about 6 to 9 miles out, the imaging infrared seekers activated. Each missile scanned the ground, precisely identifying warehouse roofs. They searched for drone holding areas and heat signatures stored in their target memory. This was the new face of global conflict. Meanwhile, an FPV swarm was tasked to strike secondary targets: drone coordination nodes, refueling points, mobile radar units. Immediately after launch, the two Su-24s banked hard left, braking for home, turning west, peeling away from known medium-range engagement lanes. At just 25 meters above ground, they deployed another wave of chaff and flare defenses. The remaining drones laid down a blanket of electronic noise, disrupting the entire enemy C2 chain. From that point, the Storm Shadows were on their own. Carrying a combined 1.8 tons of precision explosive, they began their final silent flight. This war analysis would show the four missiles racing at nearly 590 miles per hour. They flew along the Kalmius River, weaving between pine stands on Donetsk's outskirts. By the time the Panzer S-1 and Tor M2 batteries realized the true threat, it was already too late. The radar screens finally painted the low-flying contacts, but it was already too late. The defense systems launched interceptors in a desperate, last-ditch effort. A single interceptor found its mark, a Storm Shadow missile just 1.9 miles out. A white flare of fire ripped through the night sky, a brief, violent testament to the advanced weapons in play. But three of the cruise missiles pressed on, undeterred. They began their terminal dive, a maneuver optimized in modern warfare to pierce hardened concrete and steel. Midnight, November 6, 2025. The IIR Seekers locked on, matching live imagery to pre-programmed 3D target models, a marvel of defense technology. Impact. The first missile tore through the roof of Warehouse 1, the storage facility for the enemy's drones. The precursor charge detonated, breaching the armor. A gaping hole. The main charge followed, detonating inside the structure. 992 pounds of high explosive unleashed, a brutal tool of modern warfare. The blast shredded the concrete building. Hundreds of Shahed UAVs vaporized in an instant. Metal fragments and shattered wings erupted outwards. A lethal, concentrated burst, a grim military spectacle. Seconds ticked by. The second missile hit Warehouse 2. Inside, the warheads for those deadly weapons. The initial blast triggered a catastrophic sympathetic detonation. Hundreds of 40 to 50 kilogram warheads cooked off at once. A secondary conflagration erupted, a pillar of fire clawing hundreds of meters into the sky. The night over Donetsk became day. This was the face of war. The third missile found its target, the refueling and launch prep area. A blinding white flash. The zone was instantly consumed by fire, aviation fuel, compressed gas, and initiators, critical supplies for any Air Force operation. Thermal batteries and delicate electronics aboard the remaining drones ignited, setting off a chain reaction of explosions that rippled through the complex, unstoppable and absolute. Above the chaos, more than 10 FPV drones hugged the terrain, dodging shrapnel. These were not random strikes. They were a coordinated effort, a second wave targeting secondary nodes, a tactic to cripple support for enemy troops. First, an electrical substation. Then, a satellite communications relay. Finally, the last operational UAV launcher. Each FPV's 6.6 to 11.0 pound warhead was precision-guided, a key element of the offensive defense strategy. The forward control team in Kramatorsk directed the modern weapons semi-autonomously via Starlink. Accuracy, over 90%. The entire phase was complete in under 2 minutes. All secondary objectives neutralized. The complex was a funeral pyre, a mushroom cloud, a grim icon of global conflict ascended over Donetsk. It glowed an angry red for 15 minutes. Security cameras and civilian drones captured the devastation, providing a raw, unfiltered military update to the world. A modern logistics hub was gone. Test benches, warehouses, field facilities for the Russian army. All of it reduced to smoldering craters and twisted steel. The war analysis began immediately. Satellite imagery from Planet Labs and Dnipro OSIN on November 6th confirmed the result: total annihilation. Warehouse 1 was now a deep, ash-filled pit. Warehouse 2 showed 50% roof collapse, its interior structures charred black. Debris was scattered for 1,640 feet. Footage from Ukraine's SSO elite soldiers on par with any Navy or Marine Special Forces was captured by the surviving FPV drones. The feeds recorded continuous secondary explosions. The military news, in the form of raw video from Donetsk and Spartak, spread like wildfire across Telegram channels in Moscow and Rostov. In the command center, generals stared at the screens in stunned silence. Every layer of their advanced defense systems, from the S-400s on the perimeter to the Pantsir on the runway, had failed, rendered completely ineffective. In under 12 minutes, a $50 million strategic asset, a key piece of their national defense, had simply evaporated. There was no counteraction. The root cause: a single catastrophic failure in threat analysis. The system and the soldiers operating it were completely overloaded. The air defenses were saturated, flooded by hundreds of decoy drones. Amid the digital noise, 2 weak radar contacts, the low-flying Su-24s, were dismissed, ignored. Through that gap slipped the Storm Shadows and the FPVs. They penetrated the defense ring using a tactic of modern warfare. Russia itself had perfected induced chaos. Their own systems turned against them. It was a textbook drone swarm. Ukraine, using older airframes upgraded with modern intellect and advanced Western weapons, had outmaneuvered a superpower. They brought the reality of this war deep into the heart of Russian logistics. The operational cost, an estimated $5 to $8 million. The price for Russia, $20 to $30 million in physical damage. But the true cost was strategic. A production and strike capability, one the Marines and Army relied upon, was severed for months to come. The effect was more than physical. It was a multi-layered strategic shock, with ripples felt across this global conflict. Russian drone pressure on the front lines fell sharply. On the Donetsk and Zaporizhia fronts, the change was immediate. Ukraine's campaign didn't just destroy materiel, it sowed deep, corrosive fear throughout the entire Russian military. No strategic depot was safe, and this was only the beginning. If a command post, positioned 75 miles behind the front line and shielded by Pantsir and Tor defense systems, can be neutralized in 8 minutes, then where is safe? That question now haunts not just the settlers, but the military command centers in Rostov and Moscow. The Donetsk strike shattered the Kremlin's narrative of an impenetrable defense in this brutal war. Their promise to protect the territory now rings hollow, amidst the ruins and the warped steel of failed modern weapons.